Welcome to the RevMD podcast with me, your host, Dr. Debra Durst, and I have my co-host with me.
Hey guys, Farideh Golembieski, family nurse practitioner here at RevitalyzeMD, and I'm excited for this one because I think it'll be fun.
So today we are going to talk about the bush, the state of the bush.
The state of the bush. Dr. Durst, would you like to discuss why this even came up and how it became a topic?
Well,
I think it's story time.
Yeah, it is story time. So basically, I was surfing the web about something. Well, and you were with me, so therein lies the problem, because we'll get off on a tangent that's pretty funny. But I did have a story about, and it's a great story, that it was a couple of friends, and we were down in Atlanta, and it was post-conference, and we were at a very, very fancy upscale steakhouse. And at the time, we were just all sitting there at a, bar top in the bar, and we're just having dinner and then drinks, and it's a very fancy place. And then all of a sudden, this guy with this huge beard, and at that time, it was probably about 3 years ago. And at that time, the beard was in. So a lot of men had that big beard, and I was never a huge fan of that, but I still wasn't expecting this. So suddenly he comes up, he interjects into the table and leans across and looks at us and doesn't know who he's talking to.
There lies the problem.
There lies the problem. And basically, out of the blue, says, "Which one of you has the biggest bush?" Well, this was just a present dropped into my lap.
Of course it was. It just presented itself to you.
It just presented itself to me. There it was, just a present. I'm sitting at the bar, and now all of a sudden I can go head to head with this guy that thinks he's going to be funny, but doesn't know what I do for a living and that this is what I talk about on a daily basis. But I also had very strong opinions at that time about the bush, right? Because now men went where they were all, well groomed, and then all of a sudden it was a beard thing going on, so they were all bearded. And now this guy is going to ask me, and so we needed to take a step back in history and follow the trend. And so in the 80s, women had hairy bushes, and so they had a lot of hair, and men didn't. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to whatever it was, 2020, and men had a big beard and women are hairless down there, right? And so what was sitting in front of me was a guy that was way at a bigger bush than any of us. So just meant that he was the biggest
at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically that was the storyline, and I had a blast with it. And then we had him pay for dinner as well, because if you're going to interrupt our table with such a stupid question, and actually wasn't, I loved it. It was present, but you're going to pay for dinner.
You're going to pay for dinner.
Yeah.
So this turned into the state of the bush.
The state of the bush.
Where we've been, where we're at, where we're going, and the history behind it.
Yeah.
So we'll dive right into it. So like Dr. Durst said, when we go back ancient times, way back, it was a sign of fertility. It was protection. It was a sign of femininity. And then we move forward a little bit more, and we move into the 20th century, which came across with all the new things. So the Gillettes of the world emerge, and there's shaving and there's waxing. The 70s and 80s, the bush is back again. Yes. And we're full blown. And then come the 90s and the 2000s, as Dr. Durst pointed out, we're back to the Brazilian. Not only are we shaving, we're getting rid of everything.
Everything.
And now they're saying come 2020, there's a new movement that the bush might be back. Let me know your thoughts. I didn't catch that memo.
No.
We pulled our office. None of the women in our office got the memo either. But apparently there's a hashtag out there for Bush Pride. So let me know. Is it coming back? Is this a real thing? I was unaware of the revolution.
We are so curious to hear what you men think. And so frequently we hear from you men that you want to hear what we think. So this will be an interesting one to see if the bush is back. And even I will say that if it wasn't a Brazilian and a waxing and it was a laser hair removal, we consider laser hair removal permanent hair reduction. So it doesn't necessarily remove it forever, because there'll be some maintenance treatments that are needed, but it's not looking to come back in full force after a laser hair removal. So it isn't as simple as the bush being back for women that have been doing laser hair removal for some time.
But
So it'll be
again, I'm not
interesting.
super convinced it is. So when we were getting ready for this podcast, some of the things that of why we've had these trends change, right? What prompted these changes? So I found out that the Gillette razor came about in 1910. No idea, but initially promoting for underarm hair, but then also for shaving bikini line. In the 40s, swimsuit design started to change. So the skimpier the swimsuit, the more on display there is that we do not want on display. So that more shaving, more invasive treatments, right? Like the waxing or sugaring. I didn't even know that sugaring was a thing. I had to look that up.
I didn't know it was a thing either.
But it said that sugaring's dated back to Cleopatra, which I thought was interesting. Go figure.
Yeah.
And then 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Bush is back. We're all free speech. We're all natural. We're doing all the things. We're bushed up and proud.
Yeah.
And then into the 90s and 2000s, it's the Brazilian. So what seems to have kind of pushed that is television, right? The porn industry, what's being shown, swimsuits again being skimpier, and then social norms, right? Almost women, I don't want to say shaming other women, but maybe a little bit of that too, of why aren't you shaved? This is what you're supposed to be. This is what's being put out there as what's normal. And then again, like I said, now there's, who knows? I can't wait to hear the comments.
Yeah, well, and again, I would agree with you that I don't think it's back.
I don't think it's
I
back.
don't think it's coming back. I think that it may be back for some. And we're curious to see what you men think of it, because that's different than what women think of it. So I'm definitely curious to see that. But yeah, no, there is some shaming. Did I also tell you that story? I have lots of good stories, but
Lots of stories.
it's funny
about
that
the
I
bush.
have a couple just related to the bush alone. But
It's story time,
I
Dr.
know,
Durst.
it's story time. So we do OSHOT trainings and sexual wellness trainings for other offices. And I was over in Nashville doing it with another physician who's been on the podcast, Dr. Ibrahim. He's been on the podcast before. And so we did trainings together, and they always really loved the interaction, because we're like opposite ends of the spectrum in
Yes,
opinions,
ma'am.
and very opinionated as well, both of us. And so we would do the training. And so, we were having a great time, and everyone's, learning. And then they're doing OSHOTs. And there was one person that needed a little bit more in the way of practice, and we kind of ran out of models. So the next day, I decided that I would be the OSHOT trainee, or model. And I wanted him to, have lots of practice on it. So we did like multiple approaches with, that injectable that day. And then the providers are doing it. George isn't in the room, or Dr. Ibrahim, and suddenly he walks around. He probably won't even remember the story. But again, I'm up in stirrups. I got laser, people back there.
As
I got
training
all the
does, all
trainees.
around.
Everybody's around. And he walks around the corner, looks at me. He's like, Jesus, do you not have laser hair removal at your office? And and of course we do. But it was funny, because so there was some shaming, even if there was a little bit showing. So I think
shaming does happen.
Shaming does happen. It's a true story. So we would love to know how you guys feel about hair, and whether that's something you want to see come back, whether you prefer to not have that come back. But yeah.
And men, your opinion. Our camera guy seems to think it's no big deal. Hair on the legs, bush, armpit hair. He said, guys don't care. I think a lot of you will disagree. But
yeah, I don't know what I expect. I think that I would think the same way you do, but I don't know. It's interesting to hear. But I will say that like one of the reasons that hair exists on the is to keep bacteria out, and so it's interesting that we started to shave instead, which
Hmm.
would actually potentially worsen that. And a lot of women will get folliculitis, which is why we moved to waxing.
Yep.
Waxing is painful, so laser hair reduction
Yep.
is a
So there
permanent source.
is
So
ingrown
yeah,
hairs, infection, um, in some cultures, issues with lice, right? Where it's hair. You can get
yeah,
lice anywhere.
yeah.
So shaving to remove lice. So lots of things there, but there is prevention. There is some protection.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's going to happen this summer for me, though. I am going to be checking out bathing suits, and if I see,
Now it's on your
I
radar.
now I'll be like, no, yeah, no, I don't think it's going to happen because it's just it. I don't think it's going to happen.
That just
But
means sitting next to Dr. Durst at the pool will be, or at the lake this summer will be entertaining.
yeah, absolutely. It'll always be entertaining when we have these kind of
Sure.
talks and then we have to do our own polls. But our office is basically all women. It's not basically all women. Our office is all women. And they answered that that would be a no. I don't think we got a yes. So from our office, they're saying it's not coming back. All right. Well,
So let
that's
us
it. So
know.
let us know your thoughts. We are looking forward to it and let us know. Obviously, we're willing to deep dive into anything and like and subscribe and share. And thanks for listening.